Welcome to the Archival Revival, hosted by
Noor
and me, myself, Lotus. We are two multidisciplinary artists that are focused on art history, and we're going to be discovering the historical players and the evolution that plays out in the modern day. I can't wait to get into today's topic on Tatreez with our special guest.
Hi, I'm Lana. Super excited to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
So let's get into it. Can you tell us a bit about what Tatreez is?
Tatreez is a type of embroidery used by Palestinian women. It's been used for centuries, and to this day it's still used. Each embroidery, each stitch kind of symbolizes something, and yeah.
Cool. Do you have a similar definition?
Yeah, it's just a really beautiful way of embroidery that's used to represent like stories throughout history and just express like Palestinian culture and womanhood in general.
Mm-hmm. Lovely. And what can you tell us about the history of Tatreez?
The history of it is, like I mentioned, it's been used for centuries, almost 3,000 years ago. It's still used to this day, and each thing that goes into it, each garment kind of tells a story on its own. There is no real set story on what it means, because every village kind of used their own way of making or embroidering. So depending on which garment you're looking at a different story. You're looking at a different history. So yeah, kind of just depends on where you look and which garment you're looking at.
That's so beautiful. I think it really ties into that storytelling of these specific cultures within these villages. Mm-hmm. And there's a certain technique that is very distinctive compared to another village. Mm-hmm. That's lovely. Do you also have a similar history?
Yeah. What is beautiful about Tatreez is that embroidery in general is just like a really old tradition that dates back centuries. In fact, it was one of the oldest sort of trades that were around. So it's really cool to see how even though something that was made centuries before still is really prevalent till this day, and how it's almost having a comeback into our modern world.
Mm-hmm. That's lovely. And that goes to my next question. Who would practice Tatreez?
Well, back in the day, it would mostly be just women. Men would go out and work, and then women would stay at home, cook, embroider, do everything really. But nowadays, it's kind of open to everyone, anyone who wants to try it out. Both men and women can do it at home, in classes, up to whoever is interested in it.
Cool. I think I even read that embroidery was really picked up by women because it was a nice balance for them to not only take care of the kids, do housework, and it isn't very labor or very intense that might distract them. Mm-hmm. So it's a nice pastime. Yeah. Do you also have anything to add?
Yeah, I think what's kind of interesting is that how this craft is really much women-led, and in class how we're kind of looking at what even is the meaning of craft and what is the difference between an art and a craft, and how basically how the artist works with the materials, the intensity how they work with the materials, using thread and working on a garment and just doing a repetitive motion is something that's not only therapeutic, but it's also just you can produce some really nice quality things.
Mm-hmm. That is a really good point. I like what you just said. And how is Tatreez really used? I know you said that you mentioned it was garments, but is there also various types of materials?
Yeah, there's a lot of, depending on the material, there's silk, they're called thobes, the whole dress is called a thobe. So there are certain thobes that are made with silk. Usually brides would wear that. They'd come in white, and usually they'd have either the red or they'd have a blue kind of embroidery on it. Other ones also include I guess this kind of material, which is a kind of a silk, not a silk, sorry, kind of a smooth cotton. Usually that's just for everyday wear, especially centuries ago, they just wear it every single day. But yeah, depending on the colors that they use, depending on the material, it kind of all just goes into play of is it everyday, is it engagement, is it henna party, is it wedding, whichever one really.
Mm-hmm. So different occasions have different, especially the delicacy of the material and also the intricacies of the embroidery.
a lot of them too with nowadays a lot of them we wear it for henna parties, which is like the pre-engagement before the wedding. And they come with the head garments, and they usually have the little coins at the top, which kind of like symbolize like your status, like wealth and all that kind of stuff. But it was the same back in the day. It was usually only the brides would wear the head garments, and now it's like anyone can wear them. So.
That's so beautiful how the art form has really evolved, especially into modern day, when you had said that it was really passed down ancient. Yeah. And also it's used in generations within families. Is that correct?
Yeah. A lot of my family, personally my family, they kind of lost theirs. Like we don't have a lot of our their older garments, but the patterns of them kind of just passes down, and you kind of just like learn to continue with it, like, and teach your kids and then your future kids and all that kind of stuff, which is the exciting part of it. So
that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing about your personal story. Do you have something similar that you've also experienced?
Yeah, I think it's just that this is just like a really interesting topic, how everything is just sort of connected. Like stories are connected with a thread, family history, and you can just come out with something really beautiful, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, have you practiced Tatreez before?
Yeah, I have. I actually did it for another project where I just kind of learned the basics of the stitch, and I learned about the different patterns and its symbolism. And one of the main differences of Palestinian cross-stitching, as known as like that art form, and versus like just Western cross-stitching, which might be seen as more common, is that the stitches are very much, they're organized in a specific way. Because if you were to flip over a garment, then you would say each stitch is lined up perfectly. In Western cross-stitching, you would see like an actual like X, because that's how the pattern is made when you're doing the stitch. But this is done by intention because, well, if you go to Palestine, it is a hot country, let's say. There's really not enough room to do lining within clothing because you need to be as free-flowing as possible. So having the stitches be in a unified form is designed on purpose so women can display their beautiful garments and still keep cool.
Mm-hmm. That is really like good facts. I think it's really intentional, especially, and it takes a lot more work rather than just having one side is like very uniform while the other is like loose threads. So that's, yeah, a very unique characteristic. Thank you for sharing that. How long would you say that it takes to produce like a small garment, or?
It depends on each garment. Depends on how much detail you want to add to it too. So if you're gonna just do like, if say for example you're not doing a garment, you're just doing like a little pattern on on its own, it would take like a couple hours. But for a whole like thobe like this, it would take a couple months, maybe even a couple years, just because, especially if you're doing it like by hand. If it's done by machinery, quick and easy, I guess. So yeah, it just depends on what you're looking for and what kind of pattern you're going for.
Yeah, I would say something similar, considering that the stitches are so small, you can really see the detail that kind of like makes all the geometric shapes. So that act alone of making sure like the back is also perfect and the front is looking good, it does like take some time. I remember when I was doing this for my project, it was like, oh, okay, another stitch, you know, but it really gets you into a meditative flow. I did hear, however, like there's this brand called Maidira, and the founder, it does like fair trade Tatreez. They make thobes that are so gorgeous. They do some that are hand embroidered. They do some that are made with the machine. And the ones that are like the people they place an order to buy a hand embroidered outfit, like it takes about a month with a team of people working on different sections. So it could be like 3 to 5 people working on one dress or one thobe, I should say, for like an entire month. And even that, all those countless hours really adds to the value of what makes them like so, like makes it a work of art in itself.
Because it's a collaborative effort. It's also craftsmanship. It's a lot of different aspects that really come into play as well. And I imagine in history, especially like finding certain beads or like certain details that you want to add also takes time as well, just to gather. So yeah, it tells a really well-rounded story in that sense. And even the colors. What can you tell me about the colors, like especially on this piece?
So for the colors, like traditionally, red and black are kind of like the top colors that we use. Recently, they've been adding a lot more colors, like the gold, the greens, and all that kind of stuff. Like with the bridal ones, it would usually just be white and red. Like that was like back in the day, but nowadays you would see a lot more color included into it. So like the gold would be included with the white and the red. Blue would be included as well, which isn't really common back in the day as well. So with time, everything kind of changed with it, like in terms of color and some design, but it kind of still holds its value of like traditional wear because we continue to still use the traditional colors in them. So.
Yeah, I'm really noticing like even the red and the black really complement each other in this sense as well.
They're the most popular too in all of the Middle East, really. The two top colors that everyone gets. So.
That is really good to know. And what can you tell me about what Tatreez is unique compared to traditional embroidery? I know that you had talked about like the stitching is very unique. Also, even the storytelling. Is there anything else that you want to add?
I think that's pretty, like, based on my knowledge, I think that's pretty much it. The stitching is very different than like European stitching. It kind of just takes a lot more time and a lot more effort, I guess. So I think that's what like kind of brings the stitching of this like of Tatreez a lot like more unique than others.
Yeah, especially with the heritage that's being passed down. How is Tatreez memoric? Okay, how is Tatreez a memoric device and associated with various symbols linked to the Palestinian culture?
So basically, like through my research, is Tatreez is kind of like for like a long time, just how Lana explained, how women used to use Tatreez as a way to like after they do their work for the day, just to kind of wind down and just to have a thing for relaxing. But Tatreez kind of took on a whole new aspect after the Nakba. And basically, women started using Tatreez as a form of resistance because there was a lot of censoring, there's a lot of like lack of access to things because of the occupation. So what they were able to do was to stitch their stories within the garments. They have like little symbols like olive leaves, which is like very important to the agriculture of Palestine. They have the cow's eye garment. They have like all these different symbols, even things such as barbed wire, which really represents how on day-to-day Palestinian lives, they're very much fenced in because of the occupation through checkpoints, which is something that hopefully changes in the future because that is a human rights violation. But because it's difficult to get these things out into the world, what better way to do that than to wear it? To show off that symbolism, to show off that form of resistance, to say that we are here and we are strong.
That's really strong.
You can even see it on the dress, like in the middle. There's olives are very like green olives. Sorry, they're very important to our culture. So and we love growing olive trees. So it was the first thing that that kind of hit us hard, especially when we were being colonized during the first Nakba. So. They kind of symbolize it still, even in the modern day ones. Flowers are always symboled because flowers are very beautiful back in Palestine. And yeah, they usually, like the symbols always represent like hope and prosperity and like, they're always hopeful for the future. They're always looking for the best, so.
And even flowers really like embody this flourishing movement and even just blooms as well, which are really beautiful. I didn't know that, so thank you for enlightening me. What is the primary resource used for embroidery?
So I think the kind of way how I would interpret this question is kind of how we are talking about the symbolism and how story is tied into the garments, and how Palestinian women, they would see their day-to-day experiences and then they would translate that into their garments. So like it's almost like using that with their experiences. It almost becomes like the outfit itself becomes like a primary resource of like what is actually going on in terms of their day-to-day lives. So that is almost saying like, hey, we're here, this is what's happening. And I think it's just something really interesting.
Yeah, it really does tell like a really strong story, especially considering the amount of time it takes to create like a really intricate piece.
Actually, I do remember, like, do you know the Palestinian artist like Wafa Ghanem? She does a lot of Tatreez work, and basically she had a story about how her mother, she embroidered in images of bombs onto her dress with Tatreez to represent like what her childhood was kind of like and witnessing what her parents went through. And maybe you cannot straight up say these things all the time because of censorship, but if you have that kind of image, it could be like, this is evidence of what happened because I've seen it.
That is very like strong and like very valid as well. Like you want a piece that's being passed down for generations to kind of keep up with the legacy and keep up with the story that you've lived through. Where am I? Yeah. Are there stories linked to these methods of Tatreez?
I think there are like similar, like the symbolism is very much linked, but I also think like how through a culture, like even though the patterns are very similar, like through my research, I learned that like in Ramallah, it's very popular to like have a white like thobe and have like a red square of embroidery and an embroidered pattern, which is very beautiful in general. And I think like with these kind of ways that how it's a craft that not only tells stories, but is also something that it kind of shows to the world that Palestinian culture is very prominent.
Yeah. How does Tatreez link to a form of resistance?
Good question. I guess like, again, going back to the first Nakba, it kind of, when all the women from all the different villages kind of came together, they kind of started to do like the same like kind of stitching, same kind of like symbols, trying to show the world, or like show even the other Middle Easterners like this is what's happening, like we're showing you with our dresses of what's happening, we need your help, this and that. So I kind of feel like that's kind of like the form of resistance. So yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with that.
Yeah, I think it's like so needed, especially in that collaboration effort to keep sharing stories that's within the village and lived experiences, so other people can see that form of expression.
A lot of them like had gone down to Jordan, so you'd see a lot of like they'll say they're Jordanians, but they're Palestinians who have passed down like all of the like the way to stitch it and all of that kind of stuff, the thobes and whatnot. They've passed it down to other Middle Eastern countries, and now it's going around the world, which is great because now more people are hearing about it, especially with the kufi. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's the white and black one that everyone kind of you see wearing right nowadays. That one also holds a lot of symbolization about the like resistance because of the stem leaves and the olives on it. And it's just a sense of like the garment itself is like a sense of like holding like us still holding to our power and our land. So yeah.
That's so beautiful. Thank you guys so much for sharing that history. I didn't know that. Is there anything else that you wanted to add to that?
I think that pretty much sums it up right there.
You nailed it. Are Tatreez being produced now?
Yeah, there is. Right now, but like nowadays, a lot of women, especially my age, who are like getting married and whatnot, the Palestinian women are kind of going back to traditional ways, so like traditional parties, henna parties, all that kind of fun stuff. So they're in really high demand. A lot of them back home, at least, they're being mass-produced, obviously, so they need to be manufactured and sent out pretty quickly because a lot of women want them. It kind of also shows like their status. It kind of shows off like, hey, look, I got a thobe now. So yeah, very popular now. People love it, and I'm glad that it's like kind of going around the world instead of just the Middle East itself. So.
Because it's a very beautiful like work of art, and it's so necessary to have more cultures kind of be more diversified.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, what about you? Do you think that Tatreez is being more like being produced now?
I think it's kind of making a bit of a comeback because more and more people are learning it, such as myself. And there's also like more businesses that are starting to open their own practices and kind of like bring it back. And I think that's why it's important to learn about culture and especially other people's culture too. And that's why it makes it interesting for sure.
That's so great. And you had mentioned like this brand that's making these Tatreez, and it's based in Canada, is that right?
Yeah, so the brand Madeira they make their, it's based in Canada, and they help women who are over there in Jordan, and it kind of incorporates like a lot of like fair trade like practices too. What sometimes happens is that during these like women who are in refugee camps, they don't have a lot of opportunity for employment. So sweatshops often happen where they are using their craft to make these garments. And as you can see with all the detail, these works should be paid for with the proper means. So what this brand kind of does is that they employ these women from the refugee camps and give them a living wage so that like even the founder of the company said that she wants to make it so that the daughters of the workers wants to become Tatreez artists too, and it could because it has become something you can make a living wage off of. So that's why it's like really cool about that part.
And I feel like we're hearing more and more about mass production, and even like fast fashion kind of goes into line with that, and that's not great, especially for these artists that has been doing this for traditional years. And also the quality, like there's so much intricate quality, even what you're saying with like the double stitching to make sure that it's uniform in both sides is really like very evident. So what are some modern ways we can incorporate fair trade when it comes to supporting these talented women that are making Tatreez by hand or local artists?
I think this actually ties into the keychain that I gave you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
So like this keychain that I got the other day, this is Tatreez, and basically like it was made by an artist who lives in Gaza, and by buying this piece, I'm supporting them. So even if like a though something like this, it can be worth the price, but usually it costs around $4,000 if it's handmade, around give or take. But it'll cost less if it's machine made. I think by using this way as kind of like supporting artists, even if it's something as simple as buying a keychain, I think that goes a long way into supporting fair trade.
That's so necessary. And what about you? Like, do you have any personal experiences supporting like local artists?
Well, back home, a lot of them like kind of like back in Jordan, a lot of them do practice like doing it by hand. A lot of them either do like have it done by a machine and then like fix it up by hand. So I don't have any like personal experiences, but it's just what I've seen from like different stores that I've seen in Jordan. So I would like support the ones who do it by hand, just because it has more meaning to it. But it's just kind of difficult because everyone just kind of wants it like quick and fast. So.
And I think this even goes back to like transparency of brands, especially like previous projects of mine. Like when you're like looking at a website, for example, it's quite necessary that you're looking at the sustainability and like the work practices, whether they provide it or not, just to kind of differentiate if they're sketchy or not, to see who you're supporting and who you give your money to. So I think that's really necessary, especially moving into this modern day where we're purchasing things mostly online. How can we shop or even create mindfully that is sustainable and also for fostering and rebuilding the sense of community?
I think it comes from like a sense of just learning yourself. Like you said in the beginning, you said that anybody can do this craft. I highly recommend like videos on YouTube, and that in that way like you can kind of learn a little bit about it, and just by educating yourself on the craft, I think it really does help with understanding and with the movement itself, like and things like that. Like, why do people say Free Palestine? Well, it's written within the clothes.
Mm-hmm. There's also a lot of I noticed that there's a lot of like small businesses who sell like a kit to start your own like Tatreez at home, which is really cool. It's interesting, it's fun. I didn't see the prices, so I can't really comment on that. But I know that if you don't want to go out and buy the materials, you can just buy a kit, have it come to your house, and then you can watch YouTube videos, read, or just learn about it if you're interested.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's really cool. I think it's a really nice way, especially to start with, especially when you want to like learn on your own and kind of like DIY, like create something that you've done before. That's a really nice way, and I think that really segues into my next question, which is who can practice Tatreez and where can people start?
Anyone can practice. It's open to everyone around the world. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're interested, if you like it, if you like the idea of it, go ahead and try it. It is therapeutic. It's very calming. It's just like regular embroidery, but it's just a little bit, just a little bit more added steps to it. And you can start anywhere, really, just as long as you have the materials, everything that you know that you're going to need, and you can just start from there. So, yeah.
I like that. Let's see. Yeah, why is it so important that we talk about Tatreez?
I think it's important to... A lot of people don't know about it. A lot of people would like see the dress and be like, oh, it's very beautiful, but they wouldn't know what it symbolizes, what it holds, what the story behind it is. Even if there is no story behind it, like now, like if there's no like exact symbol that symbolizes something that's not actually handmade, at least like if you research about it, you'd know a little bit of history. You'd be like, oh, like now I know what the flower means, or what the little vines mean. Like it all makes sense to me now, especially with the kufiyas. That's what happened. Like people would look at it and be like, it's kind of a weird design, but with more research done, they know what the true meaning of it is. So I feel like that kind of just plays into it, and it kind of just brings awareness to the whole thing. So
like bridging that understanding and the symbolic symbols that we see that can really like tie into the heritage and the history and the generations of storytelling as well. Do you have anything else that you want to add?
Yeah, I think the more awareness that like is brought about this topic, like the more like people get to learn. And I think what it comes to is like, we're all girls here. We love fashion, we love craft and art, but also it's just the way how this is open to everybody. And also it's almost like a way to prevent censorship, because it's simply a garment, but a garment that's packed with so much meaning and culture and experiences. Like Tatreez is really just a beautiful thing that I think everybody, that I hope that within this podcast they get to learn a little bit about it, or at least we tried. So I think in that regard, like that's why it is important, is to have almost like an outlook of history through a garment that we can see in the present.
Well, that was really beautiful. I think one of the main takeaways are to like support local artists, especially going to like various like art markets, especially in Toronto, because we're so diverse that there are sometimes little booths here and there that you're able to not only talk to the artist that maybe made it, or someone that you had said that had imported it from Gaza and knows like the local artists to help support the devastations as well. So that's really important, as well as just doing your research, understanding the piece and understanding the heritage as well. What you're wearing is like so treasured and so much dedication through the art and the history. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And that concludes our episode of the Archival Revival. Amazing.